Back during the Xbox Game Showcase in summer 2024, I was incredibly surprised to see a non-Japanese JRPG bless my eyes for the very first time. As soon as I saw that Persona-esque combat menu, I immediately perked up and was super interested in Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So here we are almost a year later and the game has finally released, and I have a lot to say about my experience so far. I think this may be one of the most important releases of 2025, and it probably won't be experienced by that many people. That's its own big topic of conversation in itself, but let's take a look at the game in a vacuum. First and foremost, I'm not going to spoil anything here. I'll go over the premise, of course, but I'm only going to show gameplay of the prologue and parts of the first area of the game. But Expedition 33 is a turn-based RPG developed by Sandfall Interactive, a small French indie studio. I know some people hear turn-based combat and are probably immediately not interested. This isn't really the same as like the old Final Fantasy turn-based. This game changes things up a good bit. I've been playing it on Gamepass, and at the time I'm recording this, I've played about 6 or 7 hours, which isn't much of the game according to sites like How Long to Beat, who put this game at 30 to 60 hours depending on how much you want to experience. Despite the small playtime, I think I've got a really good understanding of what the game is going to be giving me moving forward, and just the general vibe that this game is offering. And what this game offers is pure art. The premise alone really hooked me. You play as Gustave, a citizen in a city called Lumiere, where for some reason there is a big structure in the distance with numbers on it that seem to be counting down once every year. Whenever the structure counts down, everyone in the city who is over the age of that number gets Thanos snapped and disappears. Obviously it's going to count down to 0 and there won't be anyone left in the city. No one understands why this happens, but the city leads expeditions to the structure every year to try and stop whatever is causing this phenomenon. This game, of course, is about Expedition 33, which Gustave is a part of. It doesn't really count up, so this isn't the 33rd expedition, this is just Expedition 33 is like a subtitle. This seems like the premise of some kind of HBO show, and I think that the general masses who don't really play video games could really buy into something like this. And apparently there's already talks of moving this over into some kind of TV show or theatrical release. The prologue does an amazing job at portraying the dread that some citizens have leading up to this event. This event which they throw a huge festival for, almost as if they're celebrating. World building here is also really great. That's why I strongly recommend you play the prologue when it asks you to do so at the beginning, and really just explore that prologue because it gives you so much backstory into how this world works. Don't get me wrong though, there is a tad of the campy JRPG feel in some areas, but personally I find that really charming, and it just took me back to the first time I played Final Fantasy VII. The prologue's also filled with a bunch of exposition and environmental storytelling, but even with all of that exposition, you really do have to read in between the lines of what the game is telling you and kind of use your own brain. You know, the game really respects your intelligence with things like that, and it makes me enjoy the game even more when I can look in and find things out on my own without it saying, hey, this happened a few years ago, or this person did this, or this person is the leader of this. It just calls you to use your brain. I like that it respects me enough to let me do that. There seems to be some relationships with other characters that will probably come back around throughout the game, but like I said, I'm still in the early hours. Overall, I get heavy Lost Odyssey vibes from this game, and this is a great thing. When I was doing some research about Sandfall Interactive, they mentioned that Lost Odyssey was a huge inspiration for this game, and you can really tell. Now, to briefly touch on the game's presentation, this game is absolutely beautiful. When I said this game is offering up pure art, I mean that. Whether it be the graphics, the soundtrack, or just the way it presents its story to you. So far, this game is just a work of art in every aspect. Now, originally, I hadn't found a music track that had just blown me away until I got to a certain boss fight in the second area. That was the first time that a music track in this game really made me just stop and listen to it like something out of an Atlas game like Persona or Metaphor. The soundtrack has definitely grown on me. At first, I wasn't too wowed by it, but as I'm getting through the game, I'm picking out little tracks where I'm like, okay, this is a really beautiful piece of music right here. Graphics wise, again, I said this game looks absolutely beautiful. I'm only showing early clips, but the second area of the game just blew me away visually and conceptually. Obviously, I wish I could show it to you. You can tell there's a lot of really creative people on this team. The big star in Expedition 33 for me has to be the combat. Again, some people are turned off by the turn-based combat. I love it, and Expedition 33 evolves this decade-old formula in a way that I just haven't seen done before. Now that I'm really thinking about it, actually, I think it does kind of pull from Paper Mario in the way that it's got the quick time events. Of course, you have your regular turn-based combat with stats and buffs and debuffs, with healers and magic and physical attacks. They even have a shooting system similar to Persona 5, which is really cool. All of this kind of ties back to your magic charges, which reminds me a lot of the point systems in games like Bravely Default or Octopath Traveler. You start every encounter with a set amount of these points, and every time you perform a basic attack, you'll gain 1 charge. There is no mana or anything to worry about in this game, which, as someone who plays a lot of RPGs, I think mana or magic management is a big part of the game, but it's kind of like a breath of fresh air not having to worry about that as I'm exploring a dungeon. No matter how many of these points you use, you'll always have 3 or 4 when you start your next battle. They also throw in a dodge and parry system, as well as quick time events for your own attacks. When an enemy attacks you, you have a window to press the dodge button, and if successful, you won't take any damage from the attacker. If you get that timing down just right, you'll execute a perfect dodge, and depending on which character you're using or which stuff you have equipped, that perfect dodge can give you +1 charge on that character. Then similarly, there's a parry where you just repel the enemy's attack and you get to deal some damage yourself, which is a lot harder than dodging, but so damn satisfying to pull off. I actually don't think I've pulled it off many times since doing the tutorial, but when I do, man, it goes so hard. This system has created some great moments where I've got a party member down and I'm trying to build up my charges to use my revival spell just to get them back in the game, so I'm having to rely only on my quick reflexes to dodge and parry just to stay alive long enough to res my teammate. This game does combat so well to where you aren't just spamming the A button, you actually have to engage with the fights you're in, and some of them can be really challenging. There are a few spots with enemies I knew I would just have to come back to when I was a little bit stronger, and in that way it kind of felt like Elden Ring almost. As far as RPG mechanics, Expedition 33 has a lot to offer. You've got interchangeable weapons and even these little perks that you can switch in and out. I'm blanking on the name, but you can upgrade them, switch them in and out between characters. I felt very overwhelmed when I started seeing all of the stuff that you can do and the numbers and systems you have to pay attention to, but the game does a really good job at explaining stuff like this as you come across it, so don't let it get to you. You can just read the tutorials as they pop up, and you can also reread whatever you're curious about in the menu after the fact. This game also rewards experimentation and exploration, and good lord, I would love to spoil this one thing I found by doing this experimentation, but I just can't. You've got to play the game and find it for yourself. There was just a moment in combat where I thought to myself, hey, I wonder if this thing the enemy is holding will react to this specific move. So I tried it and I went the exact way that I thought it would. So this game's great. Just go play it, please. I'm begging you. I hate that I've got to be vague, but I just can't spoil it. It was such a rewarding thing to figure out on my own. But exploring every nook and cranny will reward you with secrets and items as well. The game, in a way, kind of feels a little linear, but there is a larger area that almost acts as a hub world in between zones. You are on a massive continent, and the game very often reminds you of it. I'll say it again, this game is a work of art, and dare I say, one of the most important games to release in this year. I think this game is a breath of fresh air in an industry that has been so incredibly comfortable pumping out half-baked experiences from massive teams that just don't meet expectations and are packed with microtransactions, bugs, and battle passes. Sandfall Interactive have only had about 30-something people on the development team, and they have delivered an interesting and complete experience here with this game that, as far as I can tell, runs and also looks incredible. It's only $50 retail. It's also on Game Pass, which is how I'm playing it. They recently announced that the game has sold over 1 million copies, which is really impressive for an indie studio already, but even more impressive when you consider that the Oblivion remaster released in this same week. I really almost wonder if Oblivion has helped Expedition 33, because a lot of people are probably jumping onto Game Pass to play Oblivion, and then they see this other game that people have been raving about called Expedition 33. I'd be willing to bet that there's a lot of crossover here. If you are even slightly curious about this game, it is so worth it to just subscribe to Game Pass and try it out. Especially if you like turn-based combat, this thing's really going to wow you. But if you've already tried it, please let me know in the comments your thoughts on the game. Did you not like it for some reason? What are the reasons you didn't? Or are you enjoying your time with it like me? Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.